Thank you so much for joining us. This is our second event in the Pinch Points to Possibility series. Framed by the design thinking process, this summer we're conducting 3 in-depth conversations with educators and students across North Carolina. The goal is to give a framework for innovation and create collaboration to move from pinch points to possibilities, especially as the COVID-19 pandemic has had an unprecedented impact on education. I'm Mary Wilson, the Director of Engagement at Education NC. I'm excited to introduce our host, Ben Owens. Ben is part of the Education Innovation Network, NC, and co-founder of Open Way Learning, a nonprofit that helps schools build a culture of true innovation to better prepare students for a rapidly changing world. During the next hour, leaders and students from 6 schools will share examples of student voice and/or meeting student emotional needs of students. This event is being recorded and we will be posting it online soon after. Next week, we will be having an article come out with more details about all of this you hear today. We have 11 educators and students joining us representing 6 schools: Evergreen Community Charter School in Asheville, Northeast Academy for Aerospace and Advanced Technologies in Elizabeth City, North Phillips School of Innovation in Edgecombe County, Salisbury High School, Olympic High School in Charlotte, William R. Davie Middle School in Roanoke Rapids. I'll let Ben launch our first question for our panelists. I will ask the panelists as they answer the question for the first time to introduce themselves and their school. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Mary. It's great to be working with EdNC as always, and wonderful to be back on one of these webinars for this great series. As Mary mentioned, we started with a design sprint, as anyone who knows design thinking, and we really leaned into what were those pinch points. The 2 things that emerged is that we don't really do enough of listening to students, and that we need to do a better job of addressing student social and emotional needs. So we are shifting from the identifying problems to now identifying what are those images of possibility, what are those potential solutions. So I'm delighted to be able to host a conversation with educators and students from across North Carolina. So we're going to jump straight in, and I'm going to turn it to Ali and from Rowan Salisbury, and ask you to really describe the story that you want to elevate. And then after they finish, I'm gonna kick it off to all the schools on the panel to just also tell us about what is that story you want to elevate as that image of possibility that can inspire others. So, Ali.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ali Khatib, a rising junior at Salisbury High School of Rowan Salisbury Schools. The example that I kind of want to highlight goes back a couple years to when I was in middle school. My first year in middle school, in 6th grade, I had the pleasure of having Miss Fleming here, who's joined on this panel, as my teacher. And with that came the opportunity to speak with the superintendent of Rowan Salisbury Schools, Dr. Lynn Moody. Over some lengthy discourse over the course of a couple of months, we ended up writing an article debunking the kind of myths associated with introducing technology into schools that was later internationally published. And that kind of set a precedent to kind of gauge how the rest of my middle school years would kind of fall into place. The example I'd like to specifically highlight was when I was in 7th grade, the next year, we were assigned to create a presentation for the Literacy Summit, which is an event held by Rowan Salisbury Schools. And rather than creating the traditional PowerPoint presentation, we opted to write a parody of the hit Broadway musical, Hamilton. For my shot, we ended up writing a kind of parody to that, describing how our world today would be different had some of our most influential figures not been literate, and kind of involving that with the community as well. And that whole process, there was kind of a whole cultural underpinning to that, where the students there were motivated by themselves. At the time, it was kind of a cultural phenomenon, seeing Hamilton so widely accepted by the public and students as well. So we took that kind of internal motivation, that passion we had for this work of art, and we instilled it into our education. And that motivation, the strongest motivator, is the self, and I think that kind of goes to exemplify that.
Ms. Fleming, you want to add to that?
Yes. Sorry, I was playing with the mute button there for a second. But what was so great with this to me was when Dr. Moody called and talked about this project, she really wanted to see everybody involved. And we're going to have like 150 people at the Literacy Summit. And I think the vision was kind of just for it to be a presentation. But I turned it over to the kids and I was like, what could we do to really explain why literacy is important and to involve the community? And they took this and they ran with it. It was absolutely amazing. Every student in the class was involved. I think we had 27 or 28 students at the time. And they each had a voice in it, and they worked together, and they created this production where you had a living wax museum, you had the rap, and you had students making appeals to the community with speeches and things, and they wrapped it up with roundtable discussions with community members. But, you know, in the very beginning, not everybody wanted a speaking part, of course, and I wasn't going to force everyone to, you know, 150 people, that's a lot of people, but as of the week before, every single student wanted a speaking part. And I loved how the class came together. They came to class early, worked through lunch. The whole school building was split in our groups, kind of resonated with the different parts. But seeing their passion and their drive, our art teacher got very involved and helped us. It was a community effort. And they did a fantastic job presenting. We were asked to present other places, but just seeing the excitement the kids had. I mean, we were on the bus and they were singing the rap. I mean, it was this huge part of who they were and what we did that year.
And part of the kind of success with something like that was the kind of environment that Ms. Fleming, as well as Rowan Salisbury Schools in general, has put into place, where students are comfortable to push themselves outside of their comfort zone to kind of explore new horizons. And that kind of dependence that's there on the teacher to kind of perform and lead you in that direction was kind of thrown out the window. And students were able to kind of take that initiative. And because of that, we were able to not only perform such a wonderful piece, but we ended up being engaged in it the year after, as well as at home on our own time.
Awesome. Thank you. And I know that's a perfect lead in to the story that I've had the privilege to hear from NEAT. So if y'all's team, whoever wants to kick it off first, will briefly introduce yourself and tell the story out in Elizabeth City.
Hi, my name is Hayley Rosewall, and I'm a 2020 graduate of Northeast Academy of Aerospace and Advanced Technologies. NEAT is a school that's always prioritized student voice and choice. I attended public school my freshman year of high school and then finished out at NEAT. So it was really kind of a shock at first to realize how much they valued the student body's opinions. I feel like this was made most apparent in my English teacher, Coach Kerber's class. She would frequently send out surveys asking students if they felt supported by her, if the technique she was using was actually helping them to learn. She was also very focused on trying to involve us in English and really make it personal. She designed a lot of projects that were really engaging and made us think. We also participated in a lot of class discussion and fishbowl activities. She just connected the material to our real lives and was, just constantly checking in on us. This was also made apparent in remote learning when we were all kind of scrambling, trying to figure out how we were going to make this work. And NEAT made a really big effort to make sure that they were using, applications and, materials that would still make students feel like they were getting a good education.
I'm Andrew Harris, CEO here at NEAT, and to piggyback on what Hayley said, when we came into this sort of extended remote learning environment with COVID, we definitely experienced a pinch point around sustaining that culture. At NEAT, we've been very purposeful since the very beginning in developing a culture where students and parents and staff know that they have a really strong role in shaping our school, that all their voices are not just heard, but we show that their voices are valued by visibly taking action based on what they share. And over time, we've developed several processes that help to surface their thoughts and ideas across all the stakeholder groups. For example, we have a parent advisory council, a student advisory council, student government. We regularly conduct perceptions of teaching surveys, and we have a student proposal process, just a comprehensive set of intentional structures that are designed to foster true collaboration and responsive decision making. So when COVID hit, we were already sort of culturally ready to engage students and parents as design partners as we thought about how to move forward. But the new pinch point or challenge for us was really how we adapt those existing structures to sustain a collaborative culture in the COVID environment.
And I guess I'll piggyback off of that. I'm Tonya Little. I am the Executive Director for STEM at NEAT. And I guess my story would be that we have been quite successful that during the remote learning, we were able to repurpose our STEM tools and our STEM partnerships, which is a part of what we do. We are all about the engineering design cycle, not only in the classrooms, but in decisions that are made about the school and how we are flexible and adaptable in what we do. We are in that constant stage of reflecting and improving, which is part of the design cycle. So what we were able to do is we were able to take a look at our coding and mobile app grant that we got through NCDPI. And we had gotten the grant, we got some materials, the kids were having a great time learning to code using microbits, and we hadn't got to the point of using the drones that we had acquired. So we took a look at what we were doing, and we took a look at how we're very purposeful about students working in teams in collaborative engagement, and we repurposed those STEM tools to continue to support project-based learning and collaborative learning, which are important pillars of our school. So even though the students were at their homes, we were able to put students into groups of 3 to 4 remotely, and in partnership with our STEM community partner, STEMRL City and 910 Drones, those kids were able to work remotely 3 and sometimes 4 separate locations to code and deploy a drone that was 4 hours away from where they lived. So even though we were in a remote situation, we repurposed our tools, we repurposed our partnerships, and figured out a way that we could still support collaborative learning and engineering design thinking at NEAT.
So I'll follow up with that, being supportive. I'm Carolyn Walton. I'm Director of Exceptional Children's Services and Federal Programs at NEAT. And when we hit the remote environment, it was very quickly apparent that our students with disabilities and needs were struggling in the remote environment. And instead of just applying tactics and ways that we thought would be successful with those students, our EC team rallied around our students and really worked with them to help them explore what their coping skills had been in face-to-face situations, and then look at how they could adapt those into a remote situation. And the students worked with the teachers using their voice, what worked for them, what was going to make them successful, to continue to get the support that they needed during the remote situation. We had kids hanging out on Google Meets all day with teachers just so that they knew that somebody was there watching them. We had checklists, we had text messages, we had so many different forms, but it was all personalized and developed through that collaboration with the student and the EC coaches.
Awesome. That's such a great story. Thank you. And actually that leads into Marin. I'd like for you to kind of pick up that concept about how the folks at Evergreen actually listen to students to make a shift in their case. Do you mind sharing that story?
Thank you. My name is Marin Leroy, and I'm the Environmental Education Program Coordinator for Evergreen Community Charter School. And we're a K-8 school. Part of our mission is that we're really focused on service and doing authentic service learning, starting in kindergarten. And one of the pinch points that we were discovering is that our 8th graders were really struggling to authentically meet their 20-hour service requirement. And finding that when they were standing to do their God panel, there was just such a diversity in the types of experiences that students were able to tap into in the community to have really meaningful service experience. So what we did is we asked the students what they wanted to get out of this experience of service. And for many of them, it was, they wanted to meet their graduation requirements, baseline, but also they wanted something to put on their resume. They wanted to be able to give back in a meaningful way from their community. So we made this list of things that the students thought that they would like to do. And we discovered that by asking them that, we could actually match many of their needs just on campus. So we were able to alleviate those barriers of students having to get rides to go figure out ways to go volunteer at a childcare center or at their local community center. They alleviated the need to have a parent help them after school get that need met. So we use our existing crew structure and we build the service into their regular day. And now we have this really awesome program where our 8th graders are integrating all of our school through the grades. They're helping us with facilities. They're helping in the development office. They're getting their needs met. They're meeting the requirement. And it's something that just continues to evolve, and it's become a really meaningful part of our school community. And during COVID, I've been thinking about this a lot and how we're going to apply this. And I think the answer is we'll just go back and ask the students, what do they think they can do? And how can we help them achieve their goals? And we'll check back in with the teachers and the community at Evergreen and say, what needs do you have, and see where we can find those matchups.
Thank you. Yeah, I love the fact that you stick with that core culture, the principles that you have obviously established over the years, but it's informed by student voice. That's a great lead in for the story I know Eric can tell us from Olympic High School, because you've got a culture obviously that you've developed over the years that's very community facing with partnerships. So how did you maintain that through this idea of listening to students in this kind of crazy environment?
Yeah, so our goal at Olympic, and we serve over 2,600 students in southwestern Charlotte, which is in the heart of, there's a lot of businesses and industries in that area. And our goal, because the majority of our population, about 75% of our population is underrepresented groups. And our mantra, our goal, our mission has always been to ensure that our students have the opportunity to transcend economic class and attain the key, if you will, to a middle class lifestyle. And so we've engaged students by making our career and technical education program critical to how we structure our curriculum. We have 5 nationally distinguished academies, and within those academies and the local surrounding area, we've created and maintained many partnerships with the local businesses. And through these businesses, we've been able to engage these partners with providing our kids internships, opportunities to shadow. They come in, they mentor our students, they are able to basically provide them experiences to help them make a better choice about what they may want to do once they get out of high school. So because of that, because of the way that our career and technical education program is structured around experiential learning and the 5 academies, we've been able to essentially provide our students options, again, once they graduate, where they're able to go into something that they're truly interested in, where they can attain a higher standard of living. And some of the things that have come out of this programming is we've just built our 9th Habitat House with our construction academy. And in particular, during the quarantine, one of our advanced manufacturing teachers had engaged students around designing and manufacturing face shields that we are actually providing to the local hospitals, and all of our teachers will have when they return in a couple of weeks, actually. So we're just very excited about basically creating a pipeline, if you will, of the talent that we see within our building, our students, to the many jobs that we have that are available in Charlotte.
Thank you very much, Eric. Sayre, I'm going to turn to you. I know you all are doing some really cool things at the North Phillips School of Innovation. You're not in a downtown Charlotte, so you've got a different type of set of challenges. But I think what I know about your story is that you have, again, you've stuck to those core principles that make up the culture of your school. So how have you adapted what you typically do really well at your school using student voice and listening to their needs?
Hi, everyone. My name is Sayre Man. Thank you for having me here, first of all. And it's been really awesome and inspiring hearing from everyone else on the panel so far. So thank you very much. About me, I've been a teacher for 4 years. I was actually a teacher before we even were the North Phillips School of Innovation, because we used to just be a regular public middle school and high school. And we've kind of been doing an innovative transformation effort for the past 3 years. So I'm going to answer the question by giving what I think are the two kind of like rocks that NPSI sits on top of, that have been the rocks that have sort of carried us through the COVID situation. So first rock is that we are a very proud public school in Eastern North Carolina. And that's a rock for us. And I say that we're a proud public school because we really believe that public schools, and especially those that serve communities of color, which we do, have a really huge and important role in this fight for equity in North Carolina and beyond in the whole country. And we say that meaning that we believe an important part of the fight for equity is the dismantling of oppressive systems. And we believe that that means the education system, that means disrupting the education system and creating something completely transformed. So that's one rock that we're sitting on. The other one is that we're all super nerds. And specifically, we're really nerdy about human-centered design. We love human-centered design and operating with the design thinking process and everything that we do. So an essential part of our model is embedding that design process at all layers. So at our school leadership tier, at the classroom and teacher level, and then at the student level. It's actually part of our curriculum that we teach to students and how we teach them to be in the world. So, and our approach to design specifically is influenced by the Equity by Design framework, which, if you're not familiar, is it basically combines like equity work with the design process. And they have kind of like a famous motto, which is that racism and inequity are products of design, and therefore they can be redesigned. And so that is kind of like the approach that we're taking to education, and the approach that we're taking to design when we're using it to empower students and teach them to share their voice. So yeah, those two things, that's kind of what's brought us here and what's gotten us through this situation, and hopefully what will continue to get us through, because it doesn't seem like it's ending soon.
Sayre, another great inspirational story. I'm going to now turn to Halifax, just right up the road there from Sayre. Mr. Williams and Ms. Aguilar, if you don't mind, you also live in the same space where you're listening to students. I've been to Halifax County. I know you have a significant digital divide there with some of the same issues that Sayre just mentioned. How are you dealing with this challenge in this unique time?
Well, Jerome Williams, I've been doing this for a while, and nice to see Tonya. How are you doing? We worked on the STEM, I guess, some committee to recognize schools across the state a couple of years ago. But at any rate, I saw it as an opportunity. Sad that it happened and people are being affected, but a bit about our school. We live in an area in which, work in an area in which there's a digital divide. Kids don't have access to the internet, poverty, usual underrepresented groups, 90% plus, and so on and so forth. So just think of it as a situation in terms of poor performing, not on the poopy list, as I say. They're making incremental growth, but not satisfactory. This is my first year there. I've been a principal for about 16 plus years, but to make a long story short, we developed a makerspace, state-of-the-art makerspace, and it's now functional. But at any rate, March 13th, called the kids in before we got the marching orders that probably will not see you. But as soon as the kids left, we immediately talked to our staff and said, hey, we are not a one-to-one school. They don't have access to the internet, and there's going to be some serious concerns. More than likely, engagement is going to be the hallmark, and those other things that are associated with our type of clientele. So we came up with an idea called PBLAD, PBLAAD, Project-Based Learning at a Distance. Now, for those who are educators, we use instead of the Bloom's taxonomy, we use what's called the Solo taxonomy, which is roughly structured of observed learning outcomes, where we knew that the kids had to have some type of three-dimensional or tactile type of experience. So what we did was we saw what type of materials we had in place, and we came up with the handy STEM in a bag. So we beta tested first those kids who we knew in our 8th grade that were like to do hands-on things. We gave it to them. We basically gave them this sheet and a rubric. We tied in English ELA with respect to the scientific method. So we had our English teachers buy in, social studies teachers. We talked about the social impact of not being social and working isolated. Of course, the science and math teachers, it was obvious. We have various projects in which the kids can do to relate to the next generation science standards and also DPI. What happened was the kids were extremely excited about it, and this is a piece that I think that a lot of people miss. If you have a remote learning experience, the parents are saying, okay, the kids are sitting there, but how do we know they're learning? So when they do a project, the parents are able to say, hey, you're doing this, and the kids can articulate in terms of what they've done, and you have something. So each week we give them something different. Since we're more than likely to be remote in some aspect throughout the school year, we have decided that we will have these PBLAB type of experiences. The kids get to report out. The kids get to do the regular Zoom, Google Hangout, Clever, or whatever platform you use, but they have to have a specific project. And the other thing too for you administrators, students do not sit in front of the computer 20 minutes plus, they become disengaged. So we have 20-minute spurts in terms of the teacher introduce the lesson. Then we do a lot of independent practice. When we get back on, how far have you gotten to this point? And I have here Mrs. Aquas. We've worked together for about 5 years, and I think she's like the best science teacher ever. We are broadcasting from the Center for Energy Education. Our network is down today, it's getting upgraded, but nonetheless, we leveraged our partnership with the Center for Energy Education and also with Elizabeth City State University, and we got the materials out there to give to the students, and Mrs. Aquas is reaching out to, what, about 15 different states? How many? 5. Okay, 5 different states, but I think Kentucky was last week. What was this week?
We have Kentucky, Virginia, and North Carolina mixed together.
Okay, but there's a number of students, and we're finding that this approach tends to be extremely successful. And the piece that I like about it is that the kids, instead of begging them to get online, they're waiting before the teachers even get there. And she'll talk about that later. But as we're going through, she's getting practice in terms of how you're delivering this blended instruction model. For example, it takes 2 teachers for, if a kid has a question, someone needs to read the questions and interact again. And once they do the projects, they go back and report and say, okay, well, we've done X, Y, and Z, so how can we make it better? So it's student-centered because it's an active type of situation. So we're pretty excited about this particular approach to the teaching and learning process. And we do have a way to assess whether or not the students are learning, and hopefully that will tie into higher test scores for either colleges and universities or career pathways, where we can say our students really know how to do this. And we're not talking about the top of the line students, we've been talking about the exceptional ed students as well.
Awesome, thank you, Jerome. Okay, so I'm going to kind of loop us back around again, and this time I'm going to give you the choice based on the original story you told. Some of you told a story that talked about kind of the cultural underpinnings, and so if that was the basis of it, then kind of articulate what that allowed you to do in the COVID environment, and then kind of flip that is if your story was about how you were successful in COVID, articulate for the audience members, what were those cultural underpinnings that enabled that level of success? Because I think both are important, you know, as I think we're seeing with several of these examples, you know, these are clearly innovative things that have happened that stemmed from student voice, but it just didn't happen overnight. What were either those cultural underpinnings, or how did you translate that into success in detail in the COVID environment? So Rowan, Salisbury, y'all want to go first?
Of course, yeah. Something that Mr. Williams said earlier that kind of spoke to me is he said that his students were very excited to get online in the meeting before it had even started. And that's, I think, a product of the kind of community and culture that they have, which is they're kind of driving the point home that if students are motivated themselves to participate in these activities, then they're going to do the work and have a strong desire to learn rather than feel it's an obligation. And I think we kind of tend to push that, especially in this group, very hard. And that's something that I think will definitely develop this kind of whole education environment. And something specifically within Rowan Salisbury schools, thankfully for me, my 6th, 7th, and 8th grade class with Miss Fleming, we all got to grow up together. And so there was already that kind of that environment where everyone was very close-knit and comfortable around each other. But not only that, we were comfortable with those that we had not met yet, whether that be speaking with leaders from Achieve 3000 or presenting at NC Ties. We were able to feel comfortable in those situations because of the fact that we felt, yes, we have an impact on the world around us. That kind of locus of control was within us. And that is a very strong and powerful tool that we can kind of take a hold of within education to get students to be more engaged.
I guess kind of to follow up on Allie's there, I mean, Dr. Moody, our superintendent, she has really, from the beginning that I have known her, pushed the value of student voice and choice and what can you do with this? And the students just grow with that, whether you're physically in school or remotely. If they get excited about something and they can take responsibility and ownership of their learning and then take action. It's not just a project that's for the teacher to see, but something that really matters, that they feel like they are agents of change. Then they get so involved and they get to those meetings or classes early and they do extra work and they achieve incredible things. It's just, I'm always impressed by what they can do.
Hayley, would you, go ahead.
And I believe that our students are also, is also missing the school. They're also missing us as their teachers. You know, they miss socialization, they miss talking, and they miss interacting with their teachers and with their classmates. So we are now in the middle of all of this. We need to reconnect with them. We cannot lose them at this point. So I believe that us as teachers during our summer camp, we make ourselves as the material for instruction. We do not need any other instructional material except the laptop. So we ourselves, can you imagine, we maintain the students for 6 hours straight, from morning till afternoon, and they are just there. They take a break during lunchtime. And then during the lunchtime, before the lunch would go, one of them or some of the students would say, "Oh, we don't eat lunch, Miss Aquas. We can just eat here right in front of you." You know, that is really something. And they don't want to leave the session because you are there. Now, what Mr. Williams mentioned a while ago was this. It is very important that we have a good collaboration and good partnership. I was supposed to have my own class. Another teacher is supposed to have her own class. But since we are good friends, so we said, let's try merging our class. So the two of us were there and, you know, we just throw each other question and answer. It it became like a talk show. We have to make the sessions happy. We have to make all the activities fun. And, you know, if you are alone and you're talking to them at a certain point, you will get tired. But if you have a partner, you know, just like somebody looking at the chat, and then when you get so tired, somebody will share and, you know, will share the screen and everything. You have a support as a teacher. So this process is not only changing the culture of what the teacher, what you are teaching the student. It's not only about the instruction. Also on the part of the teacher, you know, we have to change our ways too. At this point in time, we need to be more exciting than what they see on movies, on films, because they are so tired of all their games at this point in time. They need real teachers at this point in time. And we are the best instructional material at this point in time.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you. Hayley, I was going to ask you kind of what has been examples of that level of excitement, that whether it's in the COVID environment or otherwise, that we've sort of been speaking to, that just inherently motivate you to want to learn? What are some of those ingredients that you have found in place at NEAT that speak to that?
The project-based learning, I would have to say, is what makes me most excited about school and stuff like that. Being able to take the materials that you're learning in class and the concepts that you're learning, and being able to made learning exciting. And for example, in my English class, we were able to, I think this was my junior year, we made, we were learning about writing, and so our teacher had us like go on Google Earth, and we got to choose a place to take a virtual tour, and then we had to write a journal about it. It's just like the creative ways that the educators at NEAT were able to, you know, just make the material enjoyable, and just make an environment where it didn't feel like learning and just getting through the curriculum. It made it feel like very fluid, and a place where, you know, we could just be comfortable.
Awesome. Marin, I know that at Evergreen, you all place a huge emphasis on the social and emotional needs of students as well, not only through your advisory, just the overall culture. And that's another element that bubbled up out of the design sprint we did. Can you speak to a little bit of that, whether it's COVID or otherwise, just how you all as a school are continuing to address those needs?
Yeah, I think that I was having some connections to what was being said about the cultural pieces, and part of, I think, what works about the crew setup, which is like a small advisory group, is that it gives us an opportunity to practice. And through through practicing having a shared language around our habits and about character, we get an opportunity to sort of be messy with each other around it, and then, you know, and then build a language that we all understand. And that, I find, is really important when we then come to these pinch points and need to ask our students to weigh in. And then we can also then dialogue back with them about what our needs are, or what the expectations are from the state. And we have this shared language that allows us to get to a common goal together. So I find that advisory space really allows us to have a place where we can do that work together, where it doesn't feel like we're taking away from you know, our academic goals in the classroom. And when things come up that need to be talked about, we do it, we talk about it, and that is the priority. So, you know, we often, you know, we'll meet as a team, and one of the teachers will say, I can do that today. You know, we had this thing come up and it's heavy, and I'm going to take it today. And so, like, at least we've kind of made sure that we're creating space for talking about the social emotional things that we know are real for our kids as part of the school day. So prioritizing it.
Thank you. Sayre, I know that's also a point of emphasis at your school as well. Can you speak to, again, whether that's pre-COVID or currently, how you are addressing students in that social and emotional space?
Cool. So last time I had talked about kind of like our commitment to equity and to the design process. And so I'm going to talk about now kind of like how we applied that in two different spheres. And then we'll get to the question in one of those spheres. Sorry, I had a plan. I just got to go with it. So first sphere that we were able to kind of like live out our vision is like we were really intentional about adult learning, which is something that I haven't heard that many other schools talking about, but it was kind of like ended up being one of our #1 priorities and things that we really worked on. The idea was kind of like, well, we have extra time, so like, what are we gonna do? You know, we have a captive audience too, because teachers are wondering what to do next. And so we were able to create a PLC series that was specially for COVID that we called From Gathering to Transformation. And we read all this really cool stuff, like here's some of the names of the articles. How to create a culture of innovation, disruptive innovation in education. Is your organization a learning organization? It was like drawing inspiration from many different kind of realms, not just the education realm. To kind of like understand how systemic change happens and how organizational transformation happens. And what that ended up doing is transforming our school staff from a school staff to a coalition of people who really want to transform our school and education. So we were able to like really make this pivot. And a big part of that was the adult learning. Another sphere that our commitment to equity and being designers showed up in is in terms of our teacher collaboration and communication. So one of our kind of like previous designs is also an advisory model. And so we were able to leverage some of our kind of like systems that came out of our shared values to use as then like making them a good system for communicating and like checking in on students' emotional needs during the COVID situation. Like really similar to what Marin just described, but our students already have like an advisor who they check in with and a group who they feel really comfortable with. And so we were able to kind of like make that shift with like little redesigning. We were just able to kind of like apply it differently, the systems that we already had in place.
Thank you, great. Eric, I know you all went through a change in the last few years from kind of that school within a school model back to kind of an overall comprehensive. And many schools, I think, would have been afraid to do that because you would lose that culture piece, but you've been able to go through that. So can you speak to what were some of the things that allowed you to do that, especially if they attend to this idea of student voice or addressing their social and emotional needs?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Olympic, I think it was in 2006, was a part of the, or received a grant through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the coalition of essential schools, where they had taken the comprehensive high school and split it up into 5 schools. And the district had determined that a couple years ago that model had reached its peak and that it was time to go back to being a traditional comprehensive high school. So I had lived the life of being an AP in that model and then being a principal of one of the 5 schools. And then I was fortunate enough to have been selected to be the principal. But being able to live as an administrator in the community where I had seen the benefits of the small school model, which included in particular, the way that we've linked the academies up to local businesses and ensuring that our children have opportunities that we typically hadn't seen in other schools in the area. And I'd spoken to apprenticeships and things of that nature. So one of my major goals in bringing Olympic back together was to ensure that, of course, we maintain all the wonderful things that had happened because of the grant through that foundation, maintaining those things while also creating a unified culture and a vision. So there were some disparities as we had worked through the 15 or 16 years of having the small school model, because you had constant change with leadership within the 5 principals. And, of course, when you have 5 leaders under one roof, that can be difficult to manage. So if anything, while the job itself and reconstituting Olympic back into one and rebuilding the vision and getting people to buy into the vision of being one school was a mega process that had to occur within literally 2 months. The school year had ended in spring of 18, and we had to open in the fall as one high school. I would say that in some ways it's actually made it easier to move our vision further, because there's less obstacles, and ultimately I'm able to better execute our mission, which again revolves around essentially equity and providing economic opportunities for our kids. I'm better able to manage the resources to ensure that we can maintain the programming that we have, and make it very much a part of how we schedule our kids. So we are wall to wall. And when I meet with my counselors and the master scheduler every year, basically I give them a priority list for how they are to schedule our students. And the first priority when creating a master schedule is obviously the core classes that are required by NCDPI, but then the academy classes are right below that. So it helps to enforce the fact that we believe in this model, we believe in the academies, and we also believe in the project-based learning that we have, the apprenticeships, the internships. And last year, I would have to look at the data for this year, but last year over 85%, and we had a graduating class of over 600 last year, but over 85% of our students had received industry credentials. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, that is what everybody's going to remember, that statistic. So thank you for including that. That's awesome. Tonya, I'm going to shift the conversation just a little bit, and I'd love to hear, you've been reflecting, we have a pretty large panel, so that means a lot of us get to listen and reflect on what you're hearing. What would the advice you would give to educators, either that are in the audience now or are going to listen to this later? What can they do to tap into student voice and really shift and transform this thing that we call school, that you have heard examples of here that are really the cool stories from North Carolina? What inspires you, and what advice would you give to educators out there?
I would say one of the most simplest things that we could do as humans is to actively listen to our kids. They're going to tell you their desires, their wants. They're going to tell you what they don't like. And if you listen to them, you can clearly understand what you need to do to have a path for success for them. Our students, as you heard our CEO say, our students inform a lot of what we do with our student panels, with our students who are able, as you heard from Hayley, to have a direct line and openness with their teachers. That would be the one thing that I would say. And then after you listen to your students, when you listen to those who are members of your school community, grow that community beyond your walls and tap into your local community so that you can fulfill those desires and needs of your students. We all have to be in this together. We have a business alliance partnership. So if we have a student that is interested in a career in aviation, we're going to tap into the Coast Guard base here in Elizabeth City. We're going to tap into the regional airport, and we're going to get students there. We've had students intern at the regional airport. So when we talk to our students and we hear what they want, we then take that next step to see what is it in-house or what is it externally. Your institutions of higher learning, Elizabeth City State University, has been a very important partner for us. We have students right now who are in remote camps with them. So if we have a need, a desire to fulfill students' passions, that's a partner that we can go to and say, how do we fulfill this? How can you help us fulfill this? And they were very instrumental with our robotics programs in helping our students fulfill those things. So actively listening, looking at your community as a school, and then extending your walls into your local community and beyond.
Ali, you want to speak to that a little bit in terms of how that may resonate with you and what advice you would offer?
Yeah, something Miss Little said that really struck a chord was kind of actively listening. And that kind of speaks to the whole idea of how awareness precedes control. Understanding like your environment and what all the kind of challenges that you're facing are is very like legitimately necessary for you to continue. It's kind of an analogy to kind of help understand that as building a house while blindfolded. If you're unaware of what tools you have at your disposal or what materials you can use to build that house, or even the blueprints for a matter of fact, you're unable to go on and achieve that goal. Whereas once that blindfold is taken off, you have this new awareness. And that awareness comes from actively like researching and listening to your community. Something that everyone that's watching this right now is they're researching and opening themselves up to different ideas and different kind of ideologies that can help them, that can kind of help them within their kind of field. And that whole kind of topic that Ms. Little talked about, where awareness precedes control, is something that I think is very necessary.
Sayre, you want to give some advice maybe to your fellow teachers that are out there, regardless of where they are in their careers, as to how they can use some of the insights they perhaps heard today?
Sure, I'd love to. I was so inspired by what you said, Ali. That was awesome. I'm like very proud of you, and I don't even know you, but you're so inspirational. You're amazing. Okay, anyway, I would just add on to what both presenters have already said, and say students are passionate about a lot of things, and sometimes like a school system or individual teachers or people can like really misinterpret that passion for being like something else other than it is. So I'll give an example. There's a teacher at my school, and through some misunderstanding, I think because she was trying to keep what we were doing as a school secret, she had managed to convey to her students that we weren't doing anything for Black History Month this year, but we actually were. And her students were so mad that they like got up and said they were gonna walk out of the class. And like the way that she interpreted it and we all interpreted it was like, great, they're so passionate. They want to learn that badly about Black History Month. That's amazing. Like, I feel that educators like should all kind of like feel the way I feel, which is like really blessed to be working with some of the most passionate people in the world. And like 90% of them are students, and that's awesome. I think like, I don't know, like I was at a Black Lives Matter march in Raleigh, and I saw a student from Edgecombe County there. Like Raleigh is very far from Edgecombe County, and I was just amazed. I was like, how did you get here? I live here, but how did you get here? And it's just like kids have a lot to share, a lot of passion to give. And I think that one kind of like crucial way that schools have missed the mark in the past is not understanding that passion, or kind of like misinterpreting it, misidentifying it as something else. Many other things, but yeah, like at the end of the day, they really want to learn things and share their voice about things, and just pursue what they love.
Thank you, Hayley. Thank you, Sayre. And Hayley, because this is focused on student voice, I want to kind of wrap us up because we do have a few logistic things before the top of the hour, but kind of close us out in what has inspired you in this conversation, and again, kind of point to that advice that you would give. I suspect we might even have some policymakers that might be listening to this. So what could you give in terms of advice out there?
I've just been very inspired by everybody on this panel. I aspire to be an educator as well, and I'm currently working as a teacher's assistant for a literacy program. So I'm very familiar with the challenges that come with online learning, and I sympathize greatly with all of these teachers who do this year-round. I mean, what advice I would give is not only to listen to your students, but to enact the change that they're asking for. You know, it's great to be listened to, but it means a lot more to be heard. And to put lasting changes into your school systems to make sure that no matter what educators you have or what administration you have, that students, they can make a change in their school. NEAT exemplified that by creating, I remember one of the first things I heard was that they had a process for changing dress code or something, and students went through like this presentation with Coach Harris and several other administrators, and they actually got, these rules changed. So just make it very accessible for students to enact change and have their voices be heard. It means a lot to me as a student to know that I can easily, make a change if I see that there's something wrong. So.
Well, thank you. And with that, we're gonna wrap up this wonderful conversation. I've got so many emotions going on right now because it's so cool to listen to these stories. I get the privilege of working with schools and states around the country, but I'll tell you, it's going on right here in North Carolina. And I'm really, really proud of my home state and the really cool innovations that we're having when students are actually co-designers in the learning process, as you've heard today. So thank you all. I wish this could go on for another hour, but we do need to close it up. So I'm going to wrap it up and turn it back to my good colleague, Mary, to talk about some path forward next steps.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Like I have been saying, this has been recorded, and I will go ahead and let that render, and we'll get that out to you guys. And then also I will be in contact sending you some follow-up and a follow-up email where Ben and I will be asking you to email back with some more questions. That way we can put those all together for an article. So this can really be professional development for our colleagues all around the state. Thank you so much for being here again. And if you have any other questions or feedback, let me know. And for all the attendees, please continue to follow the conversation. We will have another one of these in August, a month from now, the 3rd August, or the 3rd Thursday in August, and that will kind of wrap up our series. So thank you so much, and just have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Everyone, thank you.